You are welcome to another interesting topic. Dr. Morilat on EDU754 from Faculty of Education, Science Education. The topic for today is laboratory design, its methods and resources for teaching integrated science. My name is Dr. Morilat from your interesting facilitator on Faculty of Education, Science Education, Integrated Science Methods. You are welcome. Let's begin.
This is the last lesson in this series of EDU754, Laboratory Design, Safety and Management. Laboratory is a school building set aside to perform experiments. It is an integral part of science education, and it is a class. There is a small space designated as nature corner, where materials are kept. Integrated science class is an instructional facility used by the integrated science teacher to help students learn about science and how scientists work. In this lesson, you'll be exposed to one of the commonly used methods of evaluation, which is teacher test. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to differentiate integrated science laboratory from other science laboratories, describe a nature corner, explain the designs, safety and management of integrated science laboratory, discuss the principles of test construction, construct marking scheme, explain the importance of project-based assessment. Like I've told you, laboratory is a building set aside for scientific activities. It is a very important place for the teaching of basic science and technology. The curriculum emphasizes students' full involvement in the science practical works. The emphasis on laboratory work is to enable the students in the early stage of learning science develop scientific skills and attitudes. Integrated science laboratory is a tool for holistic and constructive learning. Laboratory, as I told you, is just an integral part of science education where teachers expose students to learn about science. It is an instructional facility used by the integrated science teacher. It helps students learn about science and how scientists investigate. It helps students to acquire knowledge about the world around them. Use the knowledge to invent, create, and innovate to better the conditions of the society in which they live. In the laboratory, especially for the primary and junior secondary school level, you discover that the materials to be used, they are normally sourced from the environment, and where you keep this instrument or the apparatus or the materials is what we call the nature corner in the classroom. The nature corner is a space created at a corner in the classroom where materials used for the teaching basic science and technology are kept for at least 1 week. Materials brought by the students, that is, the students bring this material from home, the teachers bring them from the environment for teaching. They are allowed to remain at the nature corner for a week before taken to the integrated science class after they must have been used in the class. What are the benefits of this nature corner? The nature corner in the classroom, like I told you, is just where you keep the science materials for teachers to be able to teach the students. The benefit of keeping them around is to remind the students of the science topic taught that week. By seeing them for the whole week, they will remember that this is the topic they were taught, the concept they were taught, it will be in their mind. It draws the attention of the students to the relationship between science in the classroom and their environment. It also makes the materials easily accessible for the teaching in the classroom. That is, the teacher does not need to be going about to look for the materials again. They are already around him in the corner, so that anytime he wants to use it, he will be able to access them. It helps the students to remember what they were taught for the week in basic science and technology. It is said to be child-centered because the students are involved in the building of the nature corner. They are the ones that brought most of the materials to the classroom. When you have laboratory in the school, like that is the integrated science laboratory for the junior secondary school, and you have the nature corner for the primary school, how do you design the laboratory? That brings us to the design of laboratory, integrated science laboratory. It contains of a larger hall, well ventilated and lighted. That is, you have a very big space, large space in the school that you can call integrated science laboratory, and it has to be ventilated, well ventilated, and there must be light. Equipped, the design, when you are designing it, the lab must be equipped with benches that are fixed with Bunsen burner, wash hand basin, and so many other materials that are required. In the large hall, equipment they are arranged according to what they are used for, that is to teach. Everything needed in the laboratory is in the integrated science laboratory and are displayed in partitions. Then the laboratory has storage room where materials not in use are kept. That is, you must have a store which is called storage room, where most of the materials that you don't use frequently will be kept. It has technicians, that is, it has a technician room where the technician managing the laboratory stays. There is also a display room where student projects and products are kept. We also have in the laboratory the mathematics section where mathematics materials are also kept. How do you manage the laboratory? Laboratory management. Every laboratory needs to be managed by the teacher and the technician. Integrated science laboratory must have a technician to keep the laboratory clean, organize and arrange the activities in the laboratory. It is the duty of the technicians to clean the laboratory, to arrange all the equipment in the laboratory, arrange them according to the activities you are going to perform in the laboratory. The technician records and keeps inventory of all that you are going to use or you are going to be using in the laboratory, including the unused ones. If you have anything, all the materials that are required for you in the laboratory, it is the duty of the technicians to record and keep them. The technician gets materials ready for the integrated science teacher. Before the experiment, it is the technician that will manage the materials. He will keep them on the table before the teacher comes in to perform the experiment. Like every other laboratory, integrated science laboratory is prone to accident. So you have to, as a technician, we have to ensure the safety of the materials and those that are going to use them. Technician will ensure that laboratory rules and regulations are observed when practical is going on. Fire extinguisher placed at accessible place, and he must also arrange and store equipment properly. The teacher also has the responsibility of managing the class or laboratory by making sure that the rules and regulations are kept by the students and even the technicians. And the integrated science teacher is also responsible for training the laboratory technicians on how to manage the laboratory. Then we have talked about the safety. We said the integrated science laboratory is prone to accidents. Yes, like any other laboratory in the school. So if you assume or you know that there may be accidents in the laboratory, then laboratory safety must be ensured. Before you allow your student to enter the lab, they must come in with goggles, they must wear gloves, wear laboratory coats, and wear shoes, so that when there is any spillage or any accidental whatever in the laboratory, they will be protected. Laboratory safety rules are there for them too, to be obeyed. And what are these laboratory safety rules? You will tell your student they have to wait for you to ask them to come into the laboratory. As a science teacher, you tell them to wait outside until you allow them to come into the laboratory. Number one, for integrated science laboratory, they are very young students, and you will not be able to allow them to go into the laboratory in your absence. Do only the experiment authorized by your teacher. That is, you have to tell the students to do the experiment that you authorize them to do. If not, they cannot just enter and do whatever they want with the chemicals or materials in the laboratory, either because of the accident or even because of wastage. Do heat liquids. Tell your students to heat liquids slowly and rotate the tubes to avoid overheat. And ask them to wet the end of glass tube before inserting it into rubber tube, especially when it is very hot. They should also report any gas leakage to avoid accident. They should not be running in the laboratory, rush or play. It is always called horse play in the laboratory. Students should not be allowed to do horse play in the laboratory. You should not allow the students to be eating in the laboratory. No type of food should be taken to the laboratory for students to eat, and you tell them not to be eating anything or taste anything in the laboratory. Laboratory accidents occurs. We have said that one of the numerous accidents that can occur in the integrated science laboratory is electric shock. This type of laboratory accident can be prevented by abiding strictly by laboratory safety rules and guidelines. And this is not only for electric shock. For any type of accident, they must be prevented, and to allow students to work amicably in the laboratory. Some of the common injuries that can occur in the laboratory include bleeding due to cut glasses. If the glasses are broken or you have sharp objects in the lab, it can cut a student's hands, and that can lead to bleeding. Burning from naked fire and chemicals can also cause injury to the student. Shock from electricity can cause injury. Suffocation from inhaling injurious vapor like toxic chemicals and inflammable chemicals, the gases in the lab, and so many other fumes can suffocate students. So those are the injuries that can occur in the laboratory. Then all these injuries can be prevented as a teacher if you want them to perform experiments safely in the laboratory. For your activity, I would like you to discuss the relevance of integrated science laboratory in achieving the objectives of basic science and technology curriculum. Now, that is for the laboratory safety, design, and management. We have talked so much about the philosophy, the nature of science, the philosophy of science, psychology of learning, methods of teaching, laboratory design, planning of your lesson, and the rest of them. But you cannot just be teaching these students without knowing the outcomes of their learning. And that brings us to the issue of test and assessment. When you teach your students, they must be tested, or you assess them to know whether you have taught them, they have understood, or you have achieved the stated objectives, or your teaching has been effective. And what are these? Test is a series of activities purposely designed to measure learners' abilities to recall facts. You test your students to know whether what you have taught them has been understood, and this can only be known by asking them to know what you have taught them. It is an assessment model for determining student learning outcome in a subject. It is done at the midterm or end of the session or after a topic, and that is why in a test and assessment we have what we call formative and summative assessment, or formative and summative evaluation, where during the lesson or during the period of your teaching, you can test your students for formative assessment to know whether you have achieved the stated objectives, or you test them at the end of your lesson or at the end of the term, which can be termed as a summative assessment or summative evaluation. And this can only be carried out by giving them test. A test must be valid and reliable. What are the functions of test? Why do you give test? You give test to your student for three different things or three different functions. The first one is instructional function. You test so that students' progress in the science class will provide to you as a teacher with the information on the student rate of learning, whether they are learning faster or slowly. When you give when you give test, it will show you that you have done your instruction very well, or you still need to go back and try another method. Then it can be used as guidance. That is, the report of the test are counseling tools. If students are failing your subject or they are failing a particular concept, you can use it as counseling tools. You call them or call the attention of the student to it, that they can still do well. It can also be used as for the parents to know the performance of their children or words. It can be used in administration. That is, the administrators will use it as records in the school, either for career choice or even for record purpose. Then you can also use as like I said, as administrative functions. It is also a quality assurance for school to know whether they have been doing well or not. It assists in grouping or placement of students. That is, you can use it to promote students if that is for a placement in another class. You use administrative function can be used to place students into another class. There are other four different forms of test. We have different forms of test which we are going to discuss about. What are these forms of test? You know the functions of test, you know the forms of test, you know all the different types of things that you are supposed to do to assess your student. The forms of test now that you can give to your student. One of them is essay test type of test, objective test, multiple choice test, and short answer item test. That one can be termed as completion test. Essay type of test is used to evaluate the qualitative aspect of verbal instruction, which requires the student to compose a response. That is, you allow the student to compose a response by himself. there's no restriction. Even though you have a marking guide, you know what you want the student to talk about, but at least they will now say it in their own way, and you now give assessment to that. Then you have objective test. Like I said, this one is a test, is one in which there is only one answer to each question, only one answer, and that one answer has equal mark. The one answer that is correct has equal mark with any other question within that particular test. Then you have multiple choice test. In multiple choice test, each test item has a number of alternative answers from which one is correct too. And in that case too, only one answer is correct, they also have equal marks. Then the completion test is like a filling the gap. You can have filling the gap for the student to put the correct answer. These are the forms of tests you have for your students. Then the principles of test construction. In constructing a test, the following points has to be considered. Before you can construct a test, you have to consider some factors. And what are these factors? You identify the major concept to be tested. You have to identify what you want to test the student from. Then you identify the cognitive level of the student to be tested. What are their level as far as intellectual ability is concerned? Then you decide on the number of test items to be included in the test. How many do you want to test? How many test items do you want to produce? Is it 10, 20, 30? You have to decide before you set your test, or before you construct your test. Then you prepare the table of specification to guide you on the number of test items from each concept. If you have a concept and you need to test that concept, you test the knowledge, you test the comprehension, you will test application, you test analysis, you test synthesis, and you now test evaluation. In most cases, in the junior level, at the junior level, there are some of these levels that you may not be able to test, but at least the first three levels, which is the knowledge, comprehension, and applications, are the levels that you must test in the primary and the junior secondary schools. So now, while you have set up your test items, you have constructed your test item, the next thing to do is to have marking scheme. You cannot just have test without marking scheme to guide you on how to mark your students' papers. And why do you need the marking scheme? You need marking scheme so that you will be at least objective in when you are marking your student scripts. Like in the essay test, you know that when you give them questions, they may not be able to write it the same way, and it is your responsibility as a teacher. If you have marking scheme, you'll be guided on how to mark them and be objective about the marking. A marking scheme is a model solution prepared by the examiner or the teacher with the marks distributed across the different questions in the test. In an objective test, the marking scheme requires correct responses. But like I said, it's only one correct response that you will mark in objective test. All correct responses carry equal marks despite the varying degree of difficulty associated with the different test items. Marking scheme contains the answer to the question prepared by the who set the question. Apart from the objective tests that have equal marks are assigned to questions depending on the level of cognition tested. That is, if it is an essay test, then you have to assign the marks to the question depending on how heavy or how specific the question that you have tested. Like I told you, the knowledge level will carry higher mark, The comprehension level will carry marks too, but it may not be higher as per the knowledge level. The application level too carries mark, and those ones, the different levels has different mark assigned to them. The low level cognition like knowledge carries low mark. So those are the things that you should know about marking scheme. There's another way of assessing your students. The project-based assessment is that assessment that will be required by you. What is this project-based assessment? Project-based assessment is a technique option for educators looking to review the ability of students to be creative and diverse with their coursework. When you give a project-based assessment, this one will allow the student to go and find out, like we have said in project method, and when you give them and they go out to find out, it makes them to be creative, because they will use whatever they know about it to find out the solution to the problem, and it diversify their knowledge and make them work on their coursework. And experience gained throughout the time frame of the class will also be subjected to make them to be creative. Then the project-based assessments are opportunities to utilize and measure the higher order thinking skill of students when they are allowed, or you base your assessment on their projects, on the way you have them to find out things by themselves. So that one will help them to will make them to have higher thinking skill, higher order thinking skill, because they must think before they can do some of those things. The worksheet can help guide both the teacher and the student in assessing the project. That is, if you want to assess this project-based assessment, what you are going to use is worksheet, and it will guide you to assess the project. Now we have come to the end of this lesson. Let us summarize what we have been taught in this lesson. We said that integrated science has its own laboratory different from other science laboratories to suit the nature of activities that take place in it. They are junior secondary school, so their laboratory must be different from other science laboratories. It has all the facilities of the laboratory, such as storage room, preparatory room, well ventilated with light, as source of water, and heating instrument. Safety in integrated science laboratory is paramount, because like any other laboratory, it also has they are prone to have accident. There must be a technologist or technicians to manage and organize the activities in the laboratory. It is a NUC requirement for accreditation of integrated science degree program. Now, test is the most reliable method. We have discussed that too. That test is designed to measure the student level of cognition. Marking scheme guides the teachers in scoring the student test. Bloom specification should be used to ensure the evaluation of all cognitive levels. Student projects are evaluated. Test construction has a guiding principle. Now, for your assignment, I would want you to construct 2 essay questions in integrated science using low and high cognitive levels in Bloom specifications. In case you want to have more knowledge about these topics, these are some references for you where you can study. Thank you for listening. Until next time, when I will come your way with another course. Bye.